Wow, that's why I don't do that part of the process. So you know that when she goes and does some work, it will be done in a way that's sometimes I think difficult in the system with a lot of complications and oversights and turns. It's really a pleasure. And this incredible goal of wanting to double the foundation by 2028 is remarkable. So I want to give a huge shout out to you and the staff, many of whom have been there for a very long time, which is also a tribute to your leadership and what it's like to work at the foundation. And they're all bought into the success. And then I'm extremely jealous of that 94% success rate in grants. I run a nonprofit, and I sometimes think wistfully about what it would be like to have that percentage. It's really wonderful. So thank you.
Member Perry.
Member Escobar Carrillo.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And I was looking at the impact report, and just to speak to the breadth of the work you all are doing and the programs that you're running really is remarkable. One thing I was wondering about that we talked about at our last board meeting was just this issue of homelessness and students who are at risk of becoming homeless. And if that's something you all have looked at, I mean, it's obviously a very big issue to tackle, but I think it's something that we're starting to look at more, and wondering if it's something that you all have thought about engaging in at all in helping students with those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not something that we're currently involved in and working on, but we think there is tremendous opportunity, and that there should be some space for us here at the statewide level to help support the student housing needs. We know that there are a number of colleges throughout the state that are really starting to dig into the issue and working to develop, I think, some very complicated but important public-private partnerships. And so we've been in kind of close contact with the colleges that are doing that type of work to understand how they're forming those partnerships, what they look like. And what we're learning is that even the colleges that are well-resourced to be able to do that work, it takes years to put that together. And so I think, one role that we can play is, number one, kind of understanding what the best practices are, learning how other colleges are being successful, and helping to disseminate those best practices. I think another way that we could be helpful is to try to figure out, well, what does a public-private partnership model look like at the statewide level? So we can help facilitate that type of work, not only with the colleges that have the resources to kind of help do it on their own, but thinking about the colleges that don't have the resources to really spend the time and energy and hire the lawyers and, all the other types of people that have to be involved to negotiate those types of deals. So I definitely think there's significant area of growth for us to think about how we might be involved in that issue.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Member Hall.
Considering the many challenges we've talked about in our meeting today that the community colleges face, it is very nice to end the day with such positive news. I mean, it's phenomenal just to get such a good report, and then to hear affirmation from Member Perry. So thanks for coming. Thanks for your leadership, and keep up the phenomenal work.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you very much.
So it's now time for board member reports. I do want to note that we have about a half hour of public comments to follow. So everybody should, who chooses to offer a board member report should be concise, and not everybody has to do it. Member Perry will go first.
With your permission, I have 5 pages of prepared remarks to make.
Can submit for the record.
No, really, I just want to talk about our visit to Pierce College, which was impressive for a number of reasons. They have a weather station, which is oldest weather station in the Pierce College. And they're also the hottest place in LA County, which was, a fun fact for those of us who live in LA County. But they also have a very impressive mental health program. And in this day and age, that's even more remarkable. But I think what really stuck with me was the work they've been doing with Dreamers. And they used to work with about 1,100 Dreamers, and sadly it's dropped down to about 800, which is a really sad testament to the climate that has been created in this country that is causing these youth who are American in any way but on paper to not access services and education that should be available to them. So I wanted to shout out to them about that program, and it underscores the importance of the work we've been doing to let dreamers access education and make them feel safe. And given we probably have a Supreme Court decision along those lines, it just makes me think about all that this board can do. I hope we do. And Pierce College was a good model for some of that good work.
Thank you. Member Villalobos.
Mine's very brief, but as you guys know, Veterans Day was a few days ago, so I just want to take the time to thank everyone for their service, the veterans in the room, Chancellor Oakley. It was great to hear of all the great events that were taking place around Veterans Day at the community colleges in LA County. So it was amazing, to be honest with you, to hear about the recognition and how, above and beyond our community colleges have gone to take care of our veterans and their dependents who support us while we deploy. So just want to wish all vets a great belated Veterans Day, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you. Member Perigo.
I've been busy, but I'll be brief. Visited Cerritos College on the listening tour with Chancellor Oakley, and Member Rawlings was there as well. Very impressive visit as well. My one big takeaway really was, well, I had a couple, but in terms of their curriculum and the things that they do, extremely impressive culinary arts program. I was really blown away by it. And the thing that really stuck with me most, and it's something that I hope we can encourage other colleges to think about especially in their CTE areas, is that they don't allow their students to work anywhere that doesn't have a living wage. They don't farm their students out just to say they're placed in jobs. They really try to cultivate relationships with people who will provide living wages to their students. And they give them really great opportunities. Like one thing they do is their students work at the Golden Globes as one of the jobs that they do while they're there. So the kitchen was impressive. They showed us around. It was really a great day. I talked with the Academic Senate President about transfer in their area, and she expressed some concerns, some of the same concerns I've heard in other places. They have Cal State Long Beach and Fullerton are their two closest transfer institutions. Long Beach she says, is just miserable trying to get students in there these days. They're very impacted. Fullerton a little bit easier, but their students really want to go to Long Beach. So we continue to have transfer issues. I also joined the FACT Legislative Day that happened at Mesa College, and so I was there to welcome people who came, as well as we had two staffers, one from Tony Adkins' office and one from Brian Manshine's office came. So while I was welcoming people to the campus, I just took a minute to discuss the funding of our system and to kind of further the dialogue that Chancellor Oakley is very eloquent about in saying that, sort of engaging in the lack of funding for this system is engaging in systemic discrimination, and we just need to continue to say that and say that it's not okay to continue about that. One thing that I was sort of struck with in the day was I was asked by a number of people who attended the event about the Board of Governors, and so I was able to convey to them really my experience here and with all of you and your sincere desire to really do what you can to support the work of the colleges. And I would just continue to encourage everybody on this board to reach out to people in operations who really want to tell you their stories and tell you what they do and how they think you can help. So that was a good day. I just got back from the National Communication Association conference in Baltimore, which isn't related to this work, but there was one item that happened there that I wanted to bring to the board. So in my work, in my other life as a speech and debate team director, I was in a number of panels that deal with speech and debate or co-curricular issues. And one thing that was reported and a concern that was brought forward by a number of colleges was this idea that through guided pathways work, co-curricular programs are kind of being shuffled aside because they don't count towards anything. And so I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board, that this was seen across a number of colleges were saying that the people were literally talking their students out of taking speech and debate in particular. And I'm not sure if this is a speech and debate phenomenon or if we're seeing this across dance and, vocal ensemble and other things that are more elective in nature. But we do know, there's a lot of really strong data that shows that students who come to campus full-time and engage in even one on-campus activity are almost like 80% more likely to persist to graduation. So I just want to make sure that I communicated that so that we could consider how to better talk to the field about making sure that students still have these opportunities, and that just because a class doesn't necessarily check a box on GE doesn't mean it's a waste of your time. It can be an incredible advantage. Just the students, I took 2 students to this conference who were on the speech and debate team. One was offered a scholarship by a university professor that was there. So being on the team affords them these kind of connections and interactions that are really critical to success in networking later. So I just wanted to bring that to the board. On the ACBO conference, besides what I've already mentioned, I did want to say that I went to the panel that John and some other people presented on our recommendations for diversification of faculty, and it was really well done. I just really wanted to compliment those who were there and those who did the panel. I think that they really captured our conversations well and took those forward in a meaningful way. I wanted to thank Chancellor Oakley for coming to the Area D meeting and to the Area A meeting for ASCCC and sharing time and listening to the concerns of the faculty. I also, on the ASCCC front, wanted to compliment Member Grande, who brought forward a resolution that changed the position on ASCCC on the baccalaureate programs to one of support. It also called for the end of the sunset provision or the pilot provision, and then a separate resolution, which was not Member Grande's, but was also passed asking for or lending support to the expansion of baccalaureates in the areas of allied health. So as a school with a baccalaureate and knowing what these programs mean to those students and how important that was to make that, I wanted to thank Member Grande for bringing that forward and helping us get that passed. And then finally, my final thing is that I've had just random conversations with board members about various things. For example, I found out that some members would like to meet Constance Carroll and learn more about our baccalaureate and so on and so forth. And I had already reached out. We have a regional consortium called SEDICA, which is San Diego and Imperial Valley Community College Association, and the presidents of the San Diego region meet on the first Monday of every month. And so I had already reached out to them and said I would just like to come for a visit. And so through all these just sort of side dialogues, I've been able to sort of pull together a little area visit for those who are interested. So I know Member Aguinaldo is coming. I believe Member Costa is coming. Member Rawlings is interested in coming. So I just wanted to throw it out for anybody who's interested. It's going to be December 2nd, and we'll start with a visit to SEDICA in the morning to talk to all the regions. So it gives you one-stop shopping, get all the presidents at once. And then we'll migrate over to Mesa, and there's been some specific asks, like looking at our LRC and our Professional Development Center, learning more about the baccalaureate, and then in the afternoon, Chancellor Carroll will come over and join us, and we'll have some, we'll set up some visits with campus leaders for everybody who's coming. So we haven't quite shook out the entire day yet, but I just wanted to welcome anybody who would like to come on December 2nd. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Member Zaragoza.
So I have a few things. I'll try to go through them quickly. I was able to meet with Assemblymember Wicks on financial aid reform alongside a lot of different student groups across all the different systems. And it went really well, and that was just great in general. It's great to have Assembly members and senators that have been in a community college. It's especially nice because you actually, they understand the problems around it. I also wanted to thank the Campaign for College Opportunity for allowing me to be one of the speakers at their Champions of Higher Education event. It went great as always, and they're celebrating 15 years, so that's great. And then I also wanted to update everyone here on the Cal Grant Student Aid Committee. So pretty much I am a part of the committee that's currently combining AB 1314 and SB 291 for next year to try to make something that all the systems, including the independent colleges, really want. And we are expecting to have our final outcome by December, so that it can start getting written throughout January to be ready for this next year. So I'll have an update in January on where that is. And then I also wanted to thank the League for inviting me to be on the Master Plan Re-envisioning Committee, which has been really great so far. And that's going to be a really exciting one for the next year. I also want to thank FAC for inviting me out to their conference and also allowing me to publish in FACS. And just a few key points from that. It was all about, how to empower the student voice in shared governance committees. Things like being active and not passive about when students are in the committee with you, how much those introductions matter. A lot of it was going beyond the surface level with students, instead of just, what's your name and major? Asking them what is it, like, what is your experience at this college? What has happened? And, just really engaging in that conversation and spending time with it, because it opens the door up for the student to then feel like they can give you that criticism freely, as well as, noticing when a student is trying to speak and just can't break through that barrier of people talking over one another. Just things like that. And also just noting that if at some colleges students aren't involved on their local shared governance committees, asking why, instead of just assuming that the students don't want to be a part of it. Oftentimes it's because there's no funding for an advisor, or their money is getting funneled in other places. A lot of colleges don't even have a facility for students to meet in, and things like that. So really questioning whether your college is giving them the resources that they need before just assuming students don't want to be a part of that. I also will be doing another publication, co-authoring one with the League, and I will be doing a presentation at CCLC to kind of do that same idea, but along the lines of how trustees and presidents can really emphasize the student voice in their capacity. And then other than that, I think we've really been talking as students in SSCCC and just students all across the state on how difficult the problem of tokenization of student voices is. We've especially been seeing things a lot more frequently as of lately at different colleges at the local level, as well as some that are a little bit bigger, more regional or statewide, where a lot of times students are kind of used as we're the students, and so whoever wins over the student, that's the person that's going to win, and that's kind of how we're utilized in certain conversations. And so when that happens, usually it's this one-sided effort where, how can the students help me, but you're not questioning how you can help the students, and that relationship is only maintained when they want something. And so really trying to have conversations around that and how to change the culture, which of course can start in shared governance, but also just in general, trying to make sure that you're personally not doing that, your organization isn't doing that, and trying to stay away from accidentally having that happen. And then one of the big things for SSCCC this upcoming year is going to be full student voting rights for trustees. And so, even though it is a hotly debated topic, the basics of it is student trustees often don't have a vote in their local trustee meetings. Oftentimes they're given a advisory vote, which basically is just I support this, please vote that way. But sometimes it's even at the end of voting. So none of the other trustees get to hear that student out and don't get to see that vote before they do their own vote. Even if it is at the beginning, there's been this debate over whether that's enough. And so that's something that Colum and I are going to be looking at in the next year. It's pretty much SSCCC's almost number one priority. And so really monitoring that and having conversations around that together. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Aguinaldo.
I don't know if my report will be as long as Board Member Paragos and Zaragoza, but I will give it a shot. I just wanted to echo Board Members Perry's comments about Pierce College. It happened on October 16th. We were also joined by Board Member Rawlings and Salazar. Aside from the fact, no problem at all. That's why we're tag teaming on this issue. So aside from the wonderful weather station, as well as the really great work that the Dream Resource Center is doing in terms of providing a safe space for conversation and connection with resources, we also had the opportunity to see their buzzing library, as well as visit areas where they provide shelter for animals during fires. We actually had the chance to go off-roading a little bit and take a truck to the top of a hill and get a really nice view of Woodland Hills. So if the Chancellor's office is interested in getting the wonderful picture that we took of all the people who were involved in the site visit, just let me know. I have it right on my phone. On November 7th, 8th, and 9th, was the Academic Senate Fall Plenary. I had the chance to attend on November 8th, and I saw Board Member Perigo and others there, and I just wanted to congratulate the Academic Senate on a wonderful session. I was really pleased to see a really robust discussion on faculty diversification in follow-up to what has been your priority for such a long time, John. So wonderful job, and special kudos to Dr. Daniel Walker, who was your keynote speaker. I think he's faculty at El Camino. He was a very compelling speaker, and I really enjoyed his comments. I saw Vice President Haynes there too. Always great seeing you. And lastly, to conclude my own personal remarks, I just wanted to share my compassion, support, and just sheer admiration for the students, faculty, staff, law enforcement, and parents who really responded to the tragedy at Saugus last week. There were two bright stars that were deprived of a really bright future. Gracie Ann Mulberger, who's 15 years old, and Dominic Blackwell, who is 14. And I think regardless of whether you are in elementary school, junior high, high school, community college, or any other place of education, you should really find and feel safety in your place of education. So we are Saugus strong, we are Centurion strong, and I send my love out to everybody affected.
Thank you. I can't remember who was next. Member Hall.
In May of this year, when I left the meeting, I drove back to San Francisco and went to my local Pete's Coffee. And when I walked out, a young man came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said he'd noticed the pin on my lapel and asked what I did with the community colleges. I said I was on the Board of Governors. And he said that he runs an online platform that attempts to place students with employers. So he works with colleges, employers, and students. It's a group called Job Speaker. So I passed the information on to Vice Chancellor Gonzalez, who in turn passed it on to Vice Chancellor Weber. And I was talking to Sheni earlier today, and apparently she's going to be meeting with this gentleman that I met. You'll meet him in December to see if it's a worthwhile platform to pursue, but it's possibly an opening for placement of students for our community college students. And then the last thing was President Epstein already mentioned it, but he and I and Member Fitzgerald visited the College of San Mateo, and we also had a great view from the president's office. The former president of College of San Mateo built somewhat of a chateau for himself, totally separate from the students and the rest of the administration. Is this massive corner office that overlooks all of San Francisco Bay. so we can go there for a visit and a view sometime if we want.
Member Fitzgerald.
Thank you, President Epstein. So just to echo the comments of Board Member Hall, I had a great time attending some college visits, the College of San Mateo. That view was incredible. And Solano Community College with President Epstein was fantastic, and it's really amazing to see how innovative their biotechnology program was. And so I really enjoyed those. On a more serious note, like my fellow student member Zaragoza said, the Student Center for California Community Colleges has begun a really game-changing transformational movement. And in brevity, I'll just summarize what the Vice President of Legislative Affairs of the Student Senate sent to the 2.1 million students of our system. Student trustees currently lack the ability to participate effectively in district governance. Student trustees must be given the privilege of making and seconding motions, receiving compensation for board service, receiving an advisory vote, and must be granted permission to attend closed sessions other than those on personnel and collective bargaining. Only 41 districts allow student trustees to make motions, 58 do not allow student trustees to attend closed sessions, and 49 provide students an advisory vote, a vote that does not count towards the total tally. You won't believe that I've actually seen an advisory vote last, which is hysterical in my opinion, because that's not even a vote. So essentially, there's a large population of students who are finally fed up with not being heard at the lowest levels of governance in our system, at the local levels, and there's a huge movement forming to fight for student trustee full rights that you should all be aware of and follow very closely. On a more light-hearted note, I just wanted to thank everyone, my fellow students across the system, all staff, faculty, administrators, trustees, et cetera, who are participating in No Shave November. Many people know about No Shave November. Some of us forget what it's actually about. Reading from noshave.org, No Shave November is a month-long journey during which participants forgo shaving and grooming in order to evoke conversation and raise cancer awareness. The intent is to use all the money that you would normally spend grooming or getting your hair cut and donate that to cancer research and awareness. And most of us know someone battling cancer. Personally, a member of my immediate family is in that struggle right now. So I just wanted to thank everybody for participating. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Baum.
Thank you, President Epstein. Two things. One is I want to thank President Stanskis as part of his collegiality and collaboration tour. He made the trek out, and we had a very productive conversation about issues before the system and ways to collaborate more effectively, and I appreciate that very much. And on a personal note, too, I wanted to thank the board, each member of this board personally, and the chancellor and the chancellor's office, because I did lose a sibling to cancer this summer, and I haven't. This is the first meeting I've been to since, and the condolences and the support that each member of this board and the chancellor's office offered was very comforting to our family in that difficult time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Oh.
Just real quick, I forgot to acknowledge President Alexis Montevirgen at Pierce for a wonderful meeting, and Coach Bill Picketts, who talked to us about his athletic program as well. So thank you very much to them.
No, I won't kill you. But I will stare at you the whole time, though.
I can handle that.
Thank you. I'm going to try to make this really short. One, kudos to the Academic Senate, John, and his team for a fabulous plenary. Kudos to the luncheon speakers panels. Both of the speaker was fabulous, but not even with the but, and the panel on diversity. And I think sitting sort of trying to get a sense of those in the room was great receptivity to what's needed. And so I just want to point that out. I had a chance to go to Santa Barbara with the chancellor, and it was eye-opening. I'll just leave it at that. I also attended the Umoja Amen Leadership Advisory group meeting that precedes the conference where students come, and sort of discuss where these two organizations that really work with students of color, in particular African American students, and to make certain that leadership stays sort of at the forefront and that these programs are supported. And then I want to just mention I also serve as a member of the African American Black Career Education Advisory Panel. We're sort of at the end of the work. Well, it appears to be somewhat toward the end of the work that we've been doing, but I want to make note of this body has completed, I think, 5 focus groups. The focus groups are of African American young people. 16 to 18 is one focus group, and then 19 to 24, and that sort of makes a difference. I observed what the focus groups here in Sacramento, and if they are any indication of who these young people are and who they represent, then we're missing some opportunities to have these students in our courses. I'll start with the 19 to 24-year-old students, young people. These are young adults. Every single one of them had gone to a community college. Every single one of them no longer goes. None of them completed. But when talking to them, we are missing some vibrant, smart, analytical folks, young people, who would benefit by virtue of coming to our colleges, and for one reason or another, due to economics, due to any number of things, are least likely to come back unless we can create a message that really encourages them to come back. And financial aid, so financial support has to be at the core of it. The 16 to 19-year-olds, even the most quiet young person, once prompted to engage, I was just dumbfounded by what wisdom they had to share in really understanding what's going on. And some of these are young people who are on our campuses, and they sit in the back of the room, and we make assumptions about them. So I say this because there is lots of work to do around how we bring them back into onto our campuses. What brought that home, and this is a very quick story, what brought that home was there was one question that was asked about first-time, full-time, and there was great receptivity to both of those groups. The ones who were still in high school saw it as a wonderful possibility. The ones that were older, there was an error made relative to identifying it that way, first time, full time. And when we tried to clarify that there would be money available to them, other supports, we lost them. We lost them because they would not have been first time. They may not have been full time. What one of them said was, well, I might not be able to do that because I don't have the funding to do it, but I'm really glad that program is available for the youngsters, those who are coming out. But what that says to me is that we've got to do a better. 291 has to pass. We have got to figure out how we get those students back into our classrooms, because we are missing true jewels in our communities by not serving them well because they can't afford to come. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we do public comment, I want to give my heartfelt thanks to Member Escobar Carrillo, Member Rawlings, and Member Grande for not doing a single thing in the last 2 months that you had to report to the rest of us. All right, public comment.
Okay. I'm going to call these up in groups of 3. Ron Gerhard from Chabot, Elizabeth Specker, Katarina Foley. We only have 2. Okay, so then can I bring up Allie Joy?
Green light. Good afternoon, Board of Governors, Chancellor Oakley. My name is Ron Gerhard, and I'm the Interim Chancellor for the Chabot Las Positas Community College District. My purpose in being here today is mostly to thank Board of Governors Tom Epstein for attending an event at Chabot College about a year or so ago, and taking the time to sit down with our college leaders, our students, our faculty, and our staff, and hearing concerns and a level of engagement that they appreciated and talk to this day. Also wanted to recognize and thank Board of Governors Darius Anderson, not here today, but for the similar type of engagement in visiting both of our colleges, as well as visiting Bay 10 districts, CEOs, and Board of Trustees, to hear concerns expressed by them regarding the student-centered funding formula. Also want to thank State Chancellor Oakley for attending an event at Ohlone College. While a little heated at times, perhaps, the event was geared towards getting Bay 10 districts together, CEOs and Board of Trustees, really to talk about issues related to the student-centered funding formula and talk about having difficult conversations about the impacts in high-cost living areas, in particular the Bay Area. And really appreciated Chancellor Oakley's engagement and his dialogue that ensued. It may not be a surprise that most pressing issue for community colleges in the Bay Area is the student-centered funding formula, and in particular, a nuance or a metric in it within the supplemental allocation that we're finding in the Bay Area is having a negative impact to the point where we potentially stand to lose tens of $millions of dollars, and if moving forward would impact access and equity to our vulnerable student populations, underrepresented student populations. So with that, again, wanted to say thank you and appreciated the engagement by Board of Governors and Chancellor Oakley, and open a invitation to all the other Board of Governors to visit our colleges in the Bay Area. You have an open invitation to my district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Katerina Fali. I'm an assistant professor of English as a second language at American River College. And to give you some context, my school serves about 2,000 immigrants and refugees in our ESL programs. We are in a moment, as you know, of AB 705 and working very hard to meet the stipulations of AB 705. One big challenge we're having right now is the current indecision over validating an assessment instrument for ESL as one of the multiple measures. I just want to point out that those of us on the ground really do see that this approval of an assessment tool is essential, and that not having one is akin to disallowing one. Just to give you some background, the students that we work with, they don't come with high school GPAs. Many of them are refugees from countries. Some of them have not gone to even elementary school, and they're coming into our programs. And actually, I teach the highest level writing class. Many of my students are transferring to our four-year universities. So to offer the suggestion of high school GPA is disingenuous to a certain degree for our students. We really need an assessment tool validated urgently since AB 705 is about to be implemented. We would really appreciate your guidance very, very soon on that. Thank you very much.
Hi, so my name's Allie Joy. I'm one of Katerina's colleagues at American River College. I'm also an ESL professor here in town. And as she mentioned, an assessment instrument is really a vital part of our assessment process. It's just one of the multiple measures that we use to help students land in the courses that they will be successful in. And in fact, ESL students understand that they need to take an assessment test to start out on the right foot. And I'd like to take just a minute to read some comments that they've written. In the packet that I hope you've already received, I have included a copy of an essay that one of our current students wrote, Alex Granishin. He's planning to become a nurse, but started out with some ESL courses. We also have about over 200 signatures that we gathered just today in a few of our courses ranging from our lowest courses all the way up to our highest courses, with students understanding that they want to have the opportunity to take an assessment instrument to make sure that they're starting in the place that they need to begin their courses. So just a few voices here. This is from Niki Babusk, who's from Hungary. Taking assessment tests was very useful for me to determine my level and find the area I need to improve. From Lee McCoy, who's one of our Vietnamese students. The assessment helps to choose the students in each class in the same range of English level. It's harmed the class and very difficult to teach if the students in different levels. It turned the college ESL to adult center where they don't have enough students at many levels. They collect them in one class. The student at higher level feel bored and quit the class because it wastes their time. The student at lower level have slow progress. They waste of time too. And then the third voice is from Alex for the essay that you have in front of you. I originally from Ukraine, and I had studied English at school for 7 years. Based on my experience in Ukraine, I know English well, but I could not understand people after my arriving in the US. The placement test gave me a clear view of my English. I understood that I cannot jump overhead, and I need to pass several levels of ESL classes before taking prerequisite classes for my major. He also noted, also, a placement test can help students don't give up because ESL students can choose a high level of ES classes and do not pass it. Disappointment at the beginning of education can lead ESL students to quit college. So 21 seconds. All right, so we have a range of students from low to high. We need an ESL assessment as part of our process to ensure that students are starting out where they need to be so they don't waste time, money, or resources. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Jeff Moran, Sanda, thank you. What she said. Paul Bracco. Not here, okay. Then Aranat. Yeah, thank you. Look at the last name.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, I'm Jeff Moran. I'm brand new ESL full-time faculty at ARC with this ARC crew, so I just want to say the same thing. Thank you all for your time, and I get the gist. I can be really brief. I just really want to say, I'm sure many people up here know, but for ESL students, they're learning not just the language proficiency that we think about when we think about getting students into transfer-level English composition, because before going full-time ESL, I've taught comp as well, college level, and at community college and at UC Davis before this. But it's also that they're acquiring like what it's like to do college in the US, right? Like what it's like to actually like experience being a student. And I think that is just something I want to remind, and I remind myself that it's something I need to think about when thinking about their actual level of the language they're producing. So, and that's something that's a little bit different from even students from extremely disadvantaged communities, born in the US and grew up speaking English at home. It's just a different kind of thing. But aside from that, I just wanted to say, I've worked in a lot of different contexts, ESL contexts, doing the freeway flyer thing part-time before I won the lottery, and I'm here with these amazing colleagues of mine. But I just want to say there is something really unique about IRC, right? I've worked in much smaller ESL departments where you can have a lot higher touch with students before you get them in the classroom. You can sit and speak to them one-on-one and assess their proficiency level eye to eye. You can also like sit and talk to them about something that they've written. But the reason I have a job now, thanks to all of your hard work in this department, is there's 2,000 students, right? There is some issue of scope and scale in terms of how we improve the students' experience at the school and also addressing students' agency, right? I do think like I feel a little conflicted about what the data shows about self-guided placement versus assessment, but there is this strong pull from the students like, I want some kind of assessment to let me know where I should go. And I don't know how to balance that out with like serving the students' desire for their own agency and also like ultimately what we all want is like higher learning outcomes and acquisition. So that's as much as I know, and I just want to say it was important to me, even though I'm just dipping my feet in, to support the people who are so passionate about this from ARC because they know their department way better than I do. So I'm here to support them and just share that little tiny bit of experience I have. So thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here today. We stormed you with our presence from ARC. My name is Sanda Valku, and I am an ESL faculty member and department chair, and it is truly an honor to be here. I am an ESL student myself. I grew up in a country where this kind of speaking was not really allowed, so it is my privilege to be here today. I also wanted to acknowledge the positive aspects that AB 705 has brought on for ESL, including the 3-year timeline for completion of transfer level English, and also the acknowledgement that we are not remedial, right? That English is a foreign language for our students, and it takes a long time to learn. It took me the better part of 12 years to be here speaking it fluently. So thank you for that. And I also I am encouraged and excited to integrate skills in reading and writing to help our students accelerate and complete transfer level English. But I'm here today to ask your support and really ask you to acknowledge the need for accurate placement. I'd like to invite you to think about moving to another country where you know nothing of the language, right? And then how would you know where to start, especially in a college, right? And to be expected to take physics or geography or math or something in a foreign language. It's really difficult for our students to know where to start. We really need them to be placed accurately so that they can learn. Right? If it's above their heads and they don't understand what they're learning, they can't succeed. I understand the equity drive behind AB 705, that it's supposed to help, and it does help native speakers of English complete transfer level English and complete their goals in a very effective manner. I have 3 kids in high school right now who are born here, right? Speak language fluently, so trust me, I really appreciate them not having to go into remedial math and English. But at the same time, I hope that we can really distinguish between a native speaker and non-native speakers of English and how different they really are. They don't have the schema, the cultural knowledge, the vocabulary that they need to be successful in college. So they need the 3 years. Many of them need more than 3 years, but more than anything, they need to have an actual instrument, a testing method to help them place correctly. The guided self-placement models that some early adopters of AB 705 tried for ESL are simply not feasible for a program of our size with over 2,000 students, faculty in the around 50 faculty. So thank you so much for your support and your help.
Thank you.
Tilimani Berset, and I teach ESL at American River College. Like Sanda, I came to this country as an immigrant. In fact, I came when I was really old. So I know what it's like to learn a language in a country where English was not the language of instruction or language that people spoke. I'm from Thailand originally, from a very small town where I would never dream that I would be here today. So I'm speaking here to ask for your support. The State Chancellor's Office actually has a memo dated September 26, 2019 that states that credit ESL is permitted to use assessment instruments approved by the Board of Governors through fall 2020, but it also says that as language programs, ESL departments have reason to assess students' language proficiency in all skills areas, reading, writing, grammar, and listening. So this is the memo, which I appreciate very much. I think what we need now is, please, I urge you to do what you preach, that is, approve an assessment for us to use. According to the approved assessment list at the State Chancellor's Office, which now somehow I couldn't find, but I downloaded a while ago, the date on the assessment approved assessment list is really 2019 as well. And so at this time, for ESL, there's only, for the computerized assessment, there's only one listening test available, listening. Not reading, not writing, not grammar, just listening. So we know students cannot do college work successfully if they don't know where they should go, if they don't have enough language to learn the content. And so I urge you to please add approved instruments for ESL so that we can help our students succeed. Our immigrant refugee students need equitable support. And all we are saying is the state chancellor's memo is very clear on this. And we know around the world, I came from a place where when I came to this country, I had to take TOEFL, test of English as a foreign language. And it cost me an arm and a leg.
30 seconds.
And so everywhere in the world, if you go to a place, you learn a language, or even board exams in this country, there are ways that you have to help people see where they should go for them to be successful. Please help us, help our students succeed by approving assessment instruments in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the last speaker is John Stanskis.
Good evening. President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley, members of the Board of Governors.
If we had a window, we could be enjoying the sunset.
We could. I think it's gone now, actually. It's past. I just have a few other things to update you on. Thank you for entertaining part of my report earlier. I wanted to start by thanking the Chancellor for coming to the Area A meeting in the Central Valley and Area D in the San Diego area. It's not a fun schedule. You have to turn around and get to hundreds of miles apart. But I appreciate you doing that and spending some time talking to Senate leaders across the state. I think they appreciated the opportunity to have an interaction with you. And thank you to all of the members, Board Member Perigo, Haynes, and Aguinaldo, who came to the plenary session. I think that the faculty like seeing you there and like knowing that you are interested in what's happening there. And members of the Chancellor's Office who came to help present information and show the partnership and the work that we do together is helpful in that. The two other things I wanted to talk to you about, the first one is about faculty diversification. You've heard that we spent most of Friday about that, and then we had a series of breakout sessions. We adopted several resolutions. I've mentioned them throughout the day today, but one of them I think reflects your comments, Vice President Haynes, about the mood of the room. And that is about once every 10 years, the Academic Senate adopts a paper that it isn't about how to do something or effective practices. It's a position paper. We pull our hair out doing it. It takes us 1.5 years to get it done. But this time it was about equity-driven systems in colleges to serve our students. And it passed unanimously from the delegates of the colleges around this. And so it takes us a couple months to get that published. I'll be sure to bring copies if you would like to see them. But I'm very proud of the work of faculty and proud of the partnership that we have had with the Chancellor's Office to move this issue forward in a way that brings along the entire field with us. There were also, the last thing to talk to you all about was transfer. I mentioned to you several months ago that it is my misfortune or fortune to be the chair of ICUS, the Intersegmental Committee of Academic Senates. This happens once every 3 years. That is a gathering of the UC Academic Senate and the CSU Academic Senate and our Academic Senate. to talk about issues of commonality in public higher education. The delegates have directed me to ensure that we can create transfer pathways that align where curricularly appropriate between the UC transfer pathways and the CSU associate degree for transfer. And we have challenged our colleagues that by the end of this calendar year, we want to see 10 of them aligned. And I know that they are having dialogue and discussion. I have reached out to the chancellor about some of the interagency communication that needs to occur. I know sometimes it appears that we as a system have a difficult time moving as quickly as one might like, but we move at lightning speed compared to UC or CSU. I'm just letting you know that when we enter a discussion with UC, it might be 5 or 6 years later, and so I'm asking them to do something in 6 months. And that's hard for them. But I think we are moving forward in a way that is in the best interest of our students. It does require us to bend. It requires us to be a little more flexible about some of the pathways that are established, but I think that in the whole, it will help us serve our students much better. And it is at the direction of the faculty to ask for the Chancellor's Office to assist us in doing this. So that concludes my report, and thank you. I can answer any questions if you have any.
And that, we don't do questions in public forum, but I'll make an exception if anybody really has a question. Nope. Okay. Okay, so that concludes our meeting. It was a good one. So, thank you.